Welcome to People, Places, and Things, a travel podcast that brings you captivating stories, fascinating people, and unforgettable destinations from all around the world. I'm your host, Ryan Lowe. Let's dive into this journey together. On today's episode, we have my older brother, Deejay Lowe. Welcome, man.
Hey, welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So we've come full circle, man. I've been annoying you since we were kids, and then now I'm annoying you to do the podcast, and you finally came on, and we're going to talk a bit about travel and yourself. First, I want to dive into growing up, our childhood in Alabama. How was that? How was growing up? How was your upbringing, being raised in Alabama with me as your little brother?
No, I mean, it was good. You know, it's all about perspective. I think Alabama has some really cool stuff. It's underutilized, but, you know, there's a lot of great hiking trails. There's a lot of water sports are huge. You know, growing up, we were able to experience the Birmingham area, and, you know, we didn't do as much outdoors activities until we got a little bit older, but no, it was good. I think, you know, Alabama definitely has some cool things to offer. It was a unique situation that we were in, and we moved around quite a bit. But overall, I think it was good. We got to meet new people. It always kept us on our toes because, you know, going to a few different schools, it's kind of you learn to meet new friends. You learn to adapt. You don't get set in a certain friend circle. No, it's good. You know, I wouldn't have traded it for anything.
Yeah, man. You got into tech at a young age, so you were always doing something with a computer, learning and reading some kind of book about coding or some different kind of thing that enhance your ability in technological circumstances. So talk about, so when you were younger, you were staying up all night on the computer, and I thought you were insane, man. You know, and later on down the line, I realized that it helped you out. You were setting up your future. Talk about your love for computers and what sparked that.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of something that's always been there, even since when I was young. We'd go over to our grandma's house, and she had a computer, and that was kind of my first exposure to it. That had to be maybe 1997, 98, maybe earlier. I'm not sure, something like that. She had an old E-Machines computer with AOL loaded up. So, you know, I'd get on there and had a kid's profile, and I could check my email and, you know, play around with the computer. And I guess that kind of sparked my interest. Later on down the road, I eventually got my own computer. I think I was maybe 11 years old, 12 years old, something like that. For Christmas, our mom had bought me a computer. I kind of spec'd it out and did like a budget build or whatever, and she was able to get that for me. And I was just stoked from there on out because there was so many things you could do. You know, we had a dial-up internet, so back then you didn't really know any different. Nowadays it's a little ineffective, but the internet was a different place back then. There's always something new to learn, always something new to read. So every day I was able to get on the computer, I was able to learn new things. And, you know, it kind of kept my ADD in check because, you know, I was always moving. I was always doing something, you know, and it was, yeah, there was some late nights staying up, learning new things. Back then, you know, one of the big things was chat rooms. You know, this is the early 2000s. So the chat rooms were big, and MSN chat, Yahoo chat, but so I got into, you know, messing around there and getting on the chat rooms and learning, you know, of course, it's like a kid that likes to tinker with things. So you get in the chat rooms and then you figure out, hey, like, how does this work on the back end? And, like, how can we modify that? And there was a whole community that was basically, they solely modified clients to be able to access MSN chat through another venue, not their own. And so you could do cool stuff. Like you could change nicknames, you could, you know, kick people from rooms, you could do a lot of things that you couldn't do within MSN's user interface. So that was kind of one of the fun things that I did. It got me into scripting because there was MRC was a client I used back then, and so we were able to modify some of the code there. It had its own little language, kind of like a native language that it was pretty simple, but you were able to make your own scripts to run like macros or to be able to access the platform. Um, so MSN, they got a little bit creative, and so they created something called Gatekeeper Passport, and that basically tried to prevent us from authenticating through MRC channels and using their user interface once again. So back to the drawing board we went, and we figured out a way to defeat the Gatekeeper Passport and still authenticate through the IRC client. So yeah, I mean, that kind of got me, that lit the spark. And then, of course, after that, the chat room started to slow down. In the early to mid 2000s, it wasn't really as lively. Oh, and I was an MSN chat host as well, so I did work for them and helped out, and so they were able to use our techniques and stuff, and it helped them develop their platform a little bit more. And we just kind of policed the rooms, you can say, but. Yeah, so as the chat rooms kind of died down, the web was really picking up. So, back then, web development was pretty simple. There wasn't as many videos as what you see now. I mean, of course, YouTube wasn't there. This was a time where, most people had dial up, or, if you did have broadband at the time, broadband was determined to be like 1.5 megs or 3 megs, and so you're still not able to transmit a whole lot of data. So, um, it was a lot of graphics. And I remember the first time that we really started using something that looks like a video in web design, and that was using Flash. And so that was, part of this suite, and it got sold a couple times. But so Flash now, it's insecure, you can't use it anymore. But that was our first kind of intro into video and web design, and so being able to integrate Flash into your web page was able to give you that dynamic content that would, that's what everyone wanted at the time. So I learned how to use Flash and how to create those graphics, but also I learned PHP and MySQL to be able to build some dynamic websites, that were able to do a whole lot more than just display a home page. And, people had a need for that. So, yeah, that was, I stayed up all night learning how to code and learning, hey, I developed this, and then you'll get errors. Anybody who codes knows that, like, you spend a lot of time debugging and going through, each line and figuring out exactly, what you think you got. And then, 2 weeks down the road, you have another bug that pops up. So it's a continual process. It's not something that you can just set it and forget it. So yeah, I mean, that did work out for me. I learned that stuff, and these are skills that I could use later on in my career. And that was definitely a building block for me, for sure. All those hours spent, it wasn't to waste. But um, yeah, it was definitely a cool thing.
Yeah, and you're actually helping me design my website today. It's not what you do today, but you can use those skills that you picked up and learned in the past today, and even develop websites. And it does bring out your creativity, right? Do you enjoy that aspect of it?
Yeah, I do enjoy that. It's for me, the visual stuff wasn't always my emphasis. I was more on the back end. I'm pretty decent with visual design, but I wouldn't say that's my emphasis. So I always try to get help. I'm not a logo designer, anything like that. I understand basic color palettes and how to make matching color schemes and style sheets. But when it comes to it, the visual design isn't exactly my forte, but I really enjoy building the websites. It isn't something that I do all the time. It's something that I do, occasionally if someone needs help or whatever, I'll jump in. A lot of the stuff that I learned is still relevant. PHP is still relevant. MySQL databases are still relevant. So, nowadays there's more what you see is what you get editors, and there's more like website builders that the GoDaddy and your bigger corps that kind of focus on web design without hiring a web designer. If you want something out of the box, that's a good way to go, especially just to get you a web presence. even social media. You can design social media pages that are pretty customizable. But if you want dynamic content, you want, shopping carts and things, you want to start looking to getting a developer to make a custom script for you to suit your needs a little bit better.
What would you tell these kids getting into tech these days? I know it's a very saturated industry, but there is some niche fields that do have potential, and going forward, it is the future. We know that with AI and everything that's going on. What would you tell kids today that are trying to learn and branch off into fields? What would you recommend?
Yeah, of course, the tech sector is completely blown up after the dot com boom. And, nowadays, as we just keep getting further and further along, I think, with kids, the thing is, it is a saturated market in the tech field. But you got to understand that a lot of people that are in the tech field have degrees from colleges, and, that's not always what they're looking for. Big tech, they're looking for talent. They're looking for, they lean more so on certifications than they do on big degrees. It's not like, other industries where if you've got a Harvard MBA, you're guaranteed a spot. It's more skill based. So, I went with a former employer, I went to a conference. I think it was back in 2018, maybe. I went to DEF CON in Las Vegas, and you see a lot of talent there. You got 20,000 or so people, and there's a ton of talent in the room. Some of them being 17, 18 years old that are giving talks and that are, trailblazers in tech, and they never stepped foot in a college. So I think the big thing to take away from that is really just put some emphasis on whatever interests you. Like if you like web design, of course, there's companies out there that'll hire you, because that still is a big business for customizable websites. And big corporations don't want to use Wix or GoDaddy. They're going to hire designers either internal, or they're going to go with a consulting company and go external. But there's so many other, like, cybersecurity. It's, one of the top trending fields right now. Cybersecurity is huge. DoD contractors will hire you. You can get hired. Every major company has, cybersecurity departments and pen testers and things like that. So there's jobs out there if you're good at what you do and you really show an interest. But I think my biggest recommendation there is, we got to remember that sometimes colleges take advantage of that. And you'll see that they advertise, top cybersecurity program. And, when you get there, you realize, that there's 800 people graduating with you with the same degree, but really no experience and nothing to show for it. And I think that more importantly than a degree from an institution, not that I don't think that's important. I think that you can learn skills, other life skills there. I caution people, because some for-profit, schemes are out there, and they take advantage of these top trending items, and it's just not necessary. You don't have to have it. If you want to go that route, that's fine, but it's not something that's absolutely necessary to break your way into tech. And I'll say this, yeah, there are a lot of people in tech. There's some talented people out there, but one thing that is rare is work ethic. And it's hard to find people that are willing to come to work every day, that'll sign in on time, that are willing to work in an office and willing to badge in every day and show up on time, and they're not running late, and they're good employees. Good employees are hard to find now. For whatever reason, as our generation's growing, I'm 34, but the younger generation, it's becoming, everyone says, the previous generation, they always have something to say about the next generation. But I will say that you see this next generation's they're more lenient on themselves. They're a lot about what's in it for them, and, trying to get the bang for the buck. And that's super good. Like, being able to, if you're being taken advantage of on a job, just leaving and going to a new job saying, hey, look, hats off to them. But at the same time, you can use that to your advantage, because good employees are becoming more and more difficult to find. And if you talk to top employers, they'll tell you recruiting talent is a huge struggle point. So never get discouraged by that. There's a job out there for you. You just got to hustle and you got to make your name. It's not something you just fall into.
That's sound advice, and hope people gain some knowledge from that and take something from that. Because a lot of times it is about the intangibles, and then just going after what you love and leaning into what you love, and using it to your advantage. But it eventually paid off for you. Yeah, you didn't go to down the traditional route, the tech industry route. You joined the Montgomery Police Department in Alabama, and you were on the beat for a while, not too long. Eventually, you became the tech and intelligence leader of the force. And I wanted to ask you, what sparked your interest in joining the force and being able to serve your community in such a unique and niche way?
Yeah, so we'll start from the very beginning there. I graduated from high school and went straight to college. That was something that, I felt like I needed to do. Um, you know, our mom works at UAB, and she had worked there at the time when I graduated. And so I went straight to college. And, I spent a couple years there at UAB, and I enjoyed my time there. I learned a lot. I lived off campus. I had a little apartment back then. It was a studio apartment, $400 a month. If you can believe this, downtown Birmingham on the mountain, $400 a month. That's including water and internet. So, times were great. You didn't have to make a whole lot of money. I worked at a Marriott hotel full time, also going to school. And so, that left a lot of time to go and, do what I wanted to do. Because I wasn't so strapped with bills now. And I think that that's one thing the younger generation struggling with now is that, you know, it's a lot harder to live now. Back then, man, $400 a month, you go out to eat. I could go grab a Chinese plate for $5. I could go grab a Hungry Howie's pizza for $5. It's just becoming a whole lot harder to live now because, these jobs, yeah, we fought for $15 an hour, but now you see, and we knew that everything else, all the prices are going to go up. Inflation is going to follow those rising wages. And so, nowadays that same apartment, who knows what it is? It might be 1,200 a month. And, that's a little bit more tight when you're talking about tripling that. Also, gas prices being what they are and food prices being what they are. It's a lot harder. So, long story short, I really did enjoy my time there. But I got to a point where I spent a couple years and I was majoring in economics at the time. And I was kind of wanting to go to law school. And so I did some ride alongs with Birmingham Police Department. And I was like, man, this is awesome. I can kind of use that legal field by going to court and being a cop. And I was like, it's changing every day. I'm going to work and doing something different. I'm not stagnant. And I was like, you know what? This is what I need to do. To be able to interest me. And, as a kid, I always liked watching cops and all that stuff. So, I got away from it for a while and then really got back into it there in college. And I applied at different departments throughout the area. I applied at Birmingham. I applied at Jefferson County, had to take a civil service test up there. I applied at Montgomery Police Department, even though I was living, up in the Birmingham area at the time. And, things worked really slowly with Jefferson County and the Birmingham area. They had a civil service test. Thousands of people took it. When I took it, it was at the BJCC, which is their convention center downtown. And there was probably 1,000 people in the room with me taking that same test. And so, this had to be maybe October or something like that. And then I got an email from Montgomery saying, hey, come to orientation, come check it out. Um, you know, let us know if you want to attend. So I said, yeah, why not? I hadn't heard from anyone else. And so I went to Montgomery's orientation. I believe that was late November, maybe early December. And you get there, you do the physical test, you do the run, the push-ups and the sit-ups. So the run's like a mile and a half and 15:28. It's like 22 push-ups in a minute and 25 sit-ups in a minute. So it wasn't bad. I was young and in shape. And, you go through this process where they make you fill out a booklet and, they start excluding people for different tattoos and different things. And so as you see your group that you started with, it just starts like diminishing little by little. You're kind of sitting in the room and then eventually, there's about 17 of us sitting there. And so the process began. And by March 1st of 2013, I was in the police academy in Montgomery. And that's about the time I started getting letters from Jefferson County agencies. I was in the top 10, but it was already too late. I didn't want to move. For one, I'd already signed a lease in Montgomery. Number two, I was already in the academy with a guaranteed job. I wasn't going to leave that for a potential. So, yeah, I went through the police academy in Montgomery and graduated. Went through training. That whole process takes about a year between the academy and training at the time. And then I was ultimately assigned to second shift West Precinct Patrol. I did just under 2 years there. So that was wild time. It's evening shift, super busy. We're always short staffed. You always need more people, but call volume's really high from that time period. And so, yeah, it was a good time. I had a great shift that I worked with. We backed each other up. We were there for each other, and it went super smooth. I thoroughly enjoyed my time. But a couple years in, we were getting a new chief, and he's really wanting to bring in some new crime statistics, ways of looking at things and reports and things like that. He was hired from Atlanta PD as a deputy chief there, and he was hired as our chief of police in Montgomery, and he was wanting to bring some of those concepts back. So a good friend of mine, even today, Alan Burr, he was in what they called the Planning and Technology Bureau back then. And I just stumbled upon him, and we were talking one day, and he was talking about a computer and some other stuff, and we just got to chat, and he's like, hey man, would you be willing to come help me with this? The chief's really wanting some new innovative stuff. And I told him, I was like, yeah, I mean, that would be awesome. And so he's like, okay, I'll talk with the chief and we'll try to get you transferred over here, and this could be your job, 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. You come here and you're a developer. You work on more so like a project manager, but you help develop these statistics, and then going forward, any technology projects, you'll be assigned some and I'll have some. And, we had a group. And so a couple weeks later, they fulfilled their promise, and I was transferred to the Planning and Technology Bureau as a police officer. And so first project was working on those crime statistics, getting that in order. And, that was kind of done in an older format. It was not automated. It was more of a weekly thing. The new chief, Chief Finley, was wanting to move this to a daily crime analysis report. So that added new challenges for us because we had to pull all these statistics in autonomously because, we can't sit there and compile numbers all day long. It just wouldn't be an efficient use of our resources. So that's what we did. We started out with a simple Excel document and kind of in the way that he liked to see it. And, myself and Alan Burr built a lot of these tables and formulas and ways of computing the data and bringing it out of our records management system, autonomously. And then that evolved into an access database, and, more autonomously with macros that are able to auto run on their own and auto email. And so that was that. And after that was done, I went through several other large projects, going through new systems and, many different technology projects that I managed at the time. And I did enjoy it. It was great. I had a kid at the time, she was, growing, McKinley. And so I was able to take that time with her on the weekends and spend time with her. And, it was really great. It was really great, but did that for a while. I believe it was about 2018. We were myself and a guy named Austin Elliott and Alan Burr were working within the Planning and Technology Bureau, and Elliott was more on the grant side, and he was like, hey, I got some extra from a JAG grant, and I think we could buy some technology and start, a real-time, center, basically a real-time crime center, and, use some of that to use some predictive policing technology and things like that are super cool. Just being on the forefront, like a proactive model versus a reactive model. And of course I was in. I was like, yeah, that sounds great to me. And so he did. He wrote it up to get us some technology with that grant money. And we did. We were kind of cutting it tight on some other money, and we had to construct a room, to be able to house all this technology. So we took and we had an old patrol assembly room there at police headquarters in the basement, and we basically stripped everything out. We had a bunch of fans in there, and it was a roll call room where all the shifts did briefings, and so we moved them upstairs, and we kind of brought that out, and we did a lot of our own labor. This was over the course of a few months, and we would come in on the weekends and other stuff, and um, we bought the technology and we did a lot of the labor ourselves. We used help from city electricians. The city electricians were helping us run the wires. We built cubicles using the carpenters. They were basically static walls that were super short height so that everyone had basically workstations, but they could see over it so they could communicate with one another. We didn't want the style of, these high walls and privacy. We wanted everyone to share information. And so we had went to other real-time crime centers and intelligence centers throughout the region, and that was really one of the things that stood out was the ability to share information. And so another thing that we were big on was ensuring that we were able to give these technologies to the entire region. So we wanted it to be a regional crime center, and that's what we did. Went through some names, came up with the River Region Star Center. STAR standing for Strategic Technology and Resource. And we built this huge video wall using a workstation with NVIDIA Quadro video cards and, huge displays. And we mounted the displays ourselves using electrical unistrut and some mounts that we found that we could lay flat on the unistrut. So yet again, a lot of things that we did by hand because, at the time, this was a new concept for us. And, until like in the business world, until you have a proof of concept and show it works, it's hard to get funding. So you're kind of in that vicious cycle of, hey, if we can't show results, we can't get funding. And, we had a chief that really believed in us. Chief Finley was, all about it. He had his limitations on the budget, but he did everything he could. And so we started that up, and 2019, we opened the River Region Star Center. I was promoted at the time to sergeant, and I was I was the supervisor there in the Star Center. And so that we continued to expand and grow, and we had officers come in, and a super successful operation. But had some other people that worked with us, and we really started putting up some cameras throughout the city and kind of really became good at that. We found that, we used to trust vendors to do a lot of things. And in government, you'll find that a lot of times you contract a lot out because you're very limited in resources, so you contract things out. But the problem with that is, one, the cost is usually higher, and two, timeliness. And that was the bigger piece to the puzzle. It's hard to get a contractor to jump on public safety needs when you need them. If we've got, a ton of crime in an area and we need a camera up, we don't have time to wait for months for a vendor to figure out approvals and ordering cameras and, getting scheduled times to get up there and put the camera up. We need to rely on ourselves. So, eventually we bought a bucket truck. We did some other things. We worked directly with traffic engineering because that was, a crazy thing. What we were trying to do, they were already doing. We were basically duplicating efforts, and the police department had never really worked super close with traffic engineering. And the guys over there, they were more than willing to help. They were like, hey, let's share information, and our cameras, you can have access to them, and then whatever y'all put up, just give us access, and we'll go back and forth like that. And it helps both of us out because they use the cameras for an intelligent traffic solution. So they want to know where wrecks are happening and where backups are, so that they can try to divert people on another route or send public information notices. And they have their own center where they monitor all that traffic. So, yeah, we got with them. Good friend of mine, Hunter, he, is kind of over the signal crew that did the hanging of the cameras. So, he kept us well equipped. If I called him, he had it handled. A guy named Tim Foster was over technology, and he was very good with making the technology piece happen and, being in the background, making sure all the cameras were programmed and making sure, all the switches were operating correctly. And, we all kind of worked together to maintain their fiber ring and add fiber. So, yeah, I mean, it was a really good time, and I made some great friends, and we made a lot of progress for the city of Montgomery. We definitely brought them into 21st century. Coming from when I first started, we didn't have body cameras. We had car cameras if you turn your lights on, but that was about all we had. We didn't have street cameras and stuff, and it definitely allowed us to use a more proactive policing model and make some good cases on people that should have been taken off the street. So it was a good deal.
Yeah, man. So you literally started from the bottom, worked your way up, and you and your team pioneered this system that really has really helped the city in a way to stop a bit of crime, and as they say, take your bite out of crime. Each person, I have respect for people that are willing to go into that field and put their bodies on the line. And a lot of people have their own opinion on that, but personally, I've done a ride along with you. We went out one Halloween night, and I really, really got to see how it was in an urban setting. Riding around and some of the more dangerous neighborhoods, and really getting a feel for kind of what you do, because a lot of people aren't put in those shoes and they don't get to see every day. They just get to see what's on TV and just get a one-sided view. But I got that viewpoint from the police vehicle. We're pulling people over, and you were really nice to them. You gave them warnings, and you just put them on the right. Get this fixed or whatever you said. And I thought about it, and it was just a really great form of policing. And I thought it just changed my perspective from that day forward. I had more of a respect for police officers, and I definitely have a respect for what you guys do. And yeah, man, I appreciate your service, and I hope everyone will go up and try a ride along at some point, and it's just getting that perspective, and get in the car with them and see what they do, and I think that's important because they do protect us, and they keep our streets safe, and try their best. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. I would highly suggest that too. I think, policing's changing today, and as we move forward, especially with this new generation of police officers, it's turning into a career, a profession. And, I tell people all the time that's wanting to get into law enforcement, the days of being able to be a beat cop and just make it are over. You got cameras everywhere. You're highly scrutinized. You have to be one with the community and be able to talk to people. You can't just go up and, you can't have an attitude with everyone you meet. You have to, you never know what they're going through. Everyone has their different issues, and you never know what someone's facing that day. So, I always try to approach it from that angle and, be that little beacon of hope they might have had that day. But yeah, ride-alongs are awesome. It allows you to see your community and what they're doing within your community rather than, what you see on TV or what you hear on the radio, or, go and see it for yourself. Just like traveling, you got to go see it for yourself. You can't sit on the sideline and hear what somebody else has to say.
Yeah, that's a very good point, man. And speaking of travel, you love travel, man. So, and you started out with Vegas. You've been going to Vegas for over a decade. You know the ins and outs. Talk a little bit about Vegas, timeshare programs, buffets, some of the stuff you like about Vegas, shows, everything.
Yeah, so Vegas is one of my top spots. I do love Vegas. There's so much to do there. I consider it like an adult Disneyland. You can go there and, there's a little bit of everything for everyone. If you're not a gambler, that's fine. There's entertainment there. There's incredible shows. There's, all kind of things you can do. If you can think about it, it's there. And yeah, so I do like to, gamble a little bit. I don't spend a whole lot. I'm definitely not a high roller, but I do like to play occasionally. And there's different casinos that you can go to, but definitely, MGM's got a strong hold on Las Vegas. And so, one suggestion I would do is say sign up for a player's card, especially MGM, because they have a low threshold on play for getting comps. So, if you go in there and throw $100 and, go back and forth for a while, you'll likely get home and get some offers next time for free rooms or, free food or whatever, just depending on what you spend. But it's definitely it's a unique place. You can go, and I usually kind of I've stayed all over. I usually like kind of staying on the lower end of the spectrum, because I usually get free rooms and like the Luxor or whatever, the MGM Grand. I enjoy those, especially MGM Grand, because as crazy as it is, one of my favorite casinos is right across the street. It's the Oyo Casino. It's not super well known. It's right there off Tropicana. Used to be the Hooters Casino, and Oyo bought it out. It's like a hidden gem. Very cheap drinks, very cheap games. They have a dollar blackjack table 24/7, 365. No one else has that. You can actually sit there and play cards with the dealer for $1 a hand. And they bring you drinks at that price. So, yeah, it fills up quick, but there's a lot of $5 tables and there's a lot of other, $5 and $10 tables where you can actually get in there and play without having a huge bankroll. You go to the bar, the drinks are super cheap. The vibe's it's good. The machines pay out a little bit more, it seems. So I like to go over there. And if you stay at the MGM Grand, right when you come out the main entrance, there's a crosswalk that'll take you straight over to the Oyo. You can eat there. They got a steak and shake. Of course, they got the Hooters still there. So it's just a casual spot. It's not anything high key. You're not going to the Wynn, but you're also not spending that. Like you can go and still have fun, and it's such a laid back atmosphere. And on the time sharing, I'm a huge proponent on that for travel, especially within the United States. But you can go outside the country. There's some other places around the world that have timeshares, and you know one of the things that they get a really bad rep. People are like, oh, timeshares are evil, terrible. I think the salesman, the pushy tactics and stuff. And while I disagree with the way that is, the actual travel portion of it is nice. So, I'm going to give you guys a resource to go to, but if you have a family, maybe if you're a single traveler, it's not so much your speed, right? You can go and you can stay in a hostel or a hotel or do whatever, and it's okay. But if you have a family, that's where the dynamic changes. And that's what changed for me. When you start to want to bring your kids and stuff on vacation, you want to have those amenities that you don't have at a hotel, right? And you don't want to spend tons of money on a condo on Verbo because they start to cost a ton of money. So what you can do is you can go and I'll link this resource in the video, but a lot of people, they're just trying to get out of their timeshares. They're older, they're not traveling anymore, and you can get them, man, free. People are just getting at them. They're like, hey, you can have it. They'll deed it over to you. You can go through. There's a company in Georgia named LT Transfers. They do real cheap, like $250 to transfer the deed and do all the deed prep for you. But yeah, you can get them like free. You can get them close to free. Of course, places that are in demand. If you're wanting to stay, let's use Park City for example. If you're wanting to stay at the Marriott Mountainside on platinum season, which would be like, midwinter, you're not going to be able to get that for free. They're not giving those away. That's just not going to happen. But you can go, buy a condo, buy a timeshare somewhere else, and sometimes they trade really well. So if you do your research and learn, certain locations have lower maintenance fees but trade really well. So I own one in Panama City, and I also own one in Orlando. The one in Orlando, I trade usually through RCI, and I get usually about 65,000 points a year for that. So that'll do quite a bit. I mean, we usually go to Tennessee at least once, go to the beach once, stuff like that with that. And, you do have to pay your maintenance fees, but you got to do that anyway. Like you're going to have to pay property taxes. That's inevitable in life. You've got to pay to keep the place up. So if you want a nice place, you're going to have to pay. And so usually your average maintenance fees, I would say, try to maybe stick around that 800 to 900, annually. And that puts you right there. Usually it's a 7-day period, puts you a little bit over 100 a night as far as a maintenance fee goes. So if you think about it like this, you've got a timeshare. If you get it for free, now you're just responsible for that annual amount. And, you're paying a little over $100 a night, and you're staying in a 2 or 3 bedroom condo with a kitchen and all that. So by not having to eat out every meal, by having, a place where the kids can go, by having a living room, the value is definitely there. And for me, I've been doing this for, 6 or 7 years now. And that was one of the things that I got into back then, and I don't regret a single bit. I think that, if you do it the right way and you don't go into debt, both of mine are paid off. So I'll pay a maintenance fee every year. The one in Panama City, I've actually been trading to come here. So I'll pay, it's roughly about $800 a year for the timeshare maintenance fees in Panama City, but I also have a 2-bedroom, 2-bath on the beach on Panama City Beach. Nice with a balcony and a kitchen and all those cool things. So if I wanted to stay there, that's super cheap to have a 2-bedroom. Usually, though, I'll trade it. And, you pay like a trade fee usually to one of the big RCI or Interval International. But for the past few years, I've stayed at the Marriott Mountainside here in Park City in December and traded and paid nothing but a transfer fee, or a trade fee rather, and trade fee's like $200. So that cost me about $1,000. We're staying in a 2-bedroom at Mountainside, which would cost everybody else $1,200, $1,500 a night. So the value is definitely there. This year, I traded it, and we're actually staying this week here at Park Station in a 3-bedroom for 7 days in Park City. So it's definitely doable. I mean, you should be aware of the fees. Know that it's not going away. You got maintenance fees to pay. But if you're a big traveler and you got a family, it's definitely something to look into. But there's a timeshare user group. They have a forum. They're really, really active. They can help you. Just don't go buy from the developer. I know someone has to be able to continue this situation, and there's always going to be someone that does that. But try your best to go and purchase timeshares through resale from other individuals, and you'll be pleasantly surprised with the way that you travel with your family.
I think a lot of people will gain something from that, especially families that travel every year and that know they're going to travel and want to save some money on that and go to a more unique place or a more expensive place. You're in Park City right now with your kids, your family, and you're in a 3-bedroom condo through this, and you're staying for 7 days. You're a skier. You've been coming out to Park City for a few years now, seeing me. And we've been able to ski and hit the slopes and have a good time and enjoy it. Talk about what skiing means to you and how it brings the family together and why it is a tradition for you now.
Yeah, so I've been coming out here for a few years, 3, 4 years, whatever it is now. I enjoy it. I got into coming here. I brought my daughter. She loved skiing, and I got out there, and you taught me how to ski, and I started from the bottom, and it was a rough time learning. It wasn't something. I'm not a natural. Just didn't just come to me, and I got up there and just started ripping. It took time to learn, and it took a lot of dedication. Getting back up after you fall over and over and over. But I would say that I'm a pretty decent skier now. That I've stood the test of time, and I keep coming. I try to come once or twice a year, and it's important to me because one, it's a great family activity. My daughter loves it. Now, this is my first year bringing my wife out, Leslie, and her 2 kids are coming with us, or came with us this time. So both of my stepkids and my daughter are out here, Jordan and Mally. And so this is their trip where they're learning to ski. And so now we've got the whole family, and they've taken to it super well too. Everyone, Leslie learned to ski this time. They've learned to ski. So everyone's just out here ripping. We've been at canyons for a couple of days and just having a great time. I mean, they just learned this week. They've been skiing for like 4 days and they're ripping blues. And I mean, it's awesome. It does mean a lot to me. I think it's a sport that I really enjoy now and take to. And it's just so interesting. You're always learning on the slopes. It doesn't matter how long you've been out there. There's something new to learn. There's always another trail to take or a way to take the trail or, this run, trying to challenge yourself in a different way. And it's cool because you can build on that over time. It's not, you're not, yet again, I keep coming back to that same thing. You're not doing the same thing every time. It's different. It's interesting. It's fun. And it's good for the kids too. It gets them out here. And, we live in Alabama. We live outside of Montgomery, and the kids don't get to experience this. I mean, we don't even get snow hardly. I mean, it's been a few years since we even got snow in Alabama. So, them being out here, that the first time they've seen a mass amount of snow like this was here, this week. So it's really cool. I enjoy that. And, it's something that I'm grateful to be able to offer and be able to do with the kids. And, I'm grateful for you out here showing us the ropes. And every time we come, he takes off of work and you make sure, you're here with us and helping teach, even though, it can be a bear sometimes when you're just sitting there doing the same thing over and over. My uncle came this time. It's my wife's Uncle Randy. He came. He's learning to ski, and he's not a young guy. He's out there giving it his all. He tweaked his knee a little bit, but he's ready to get back out there tomorrow and try it out. And I think that's super cool. Just it brings the whole family together, and it's an activity that we can all do together, and burn some calories and get out there and move a little bit. I think that's important.
Yeah, it's a great time to bond with your family, and you coming out here means a lot to me as well. Having my brother and be able to share something I love with my family as well. I'm willing to do whatever it takes for that, and it is very special and very cool that you have 7 days out here consecutively to be able to practice and get your legs under you and hit the slopes. And I think you put it very well that it's a challenging thing that pushes you to learn something new all the time. And I think in life in general, we need to be doing that constantly in every field, right? And challenging ourselves. It's really important. And just being around people that know more than us and know different things and are able to teach us, and that could be skiing, that could be technology, wherever it may be. Put yourself around these people that are willing to show you some stuff, and I think you'll become better for it, and it's awesome that you're able to travel out here. And um, uh, I do want to talk about a trip that we did together. When I did live in Bozeman, Montana for a few years, you came out there, I believe it was 2018. You came out there and to Bozeman and flew in, and we rented a convertible Camaro, and we did a 600-mile road trip. It was a pretty cool loop, man. It was around 6 days total. Talk about that a bit and talk about your experience there.
Yeah, that was really fun. That was my first time really coming out west. I mean, other than Las Vegas or California or whatever. It's the first time actually in somewhere like Montana for sure. And it was cool. It was kind of last minute. The way it all worked out. I mean, and as I go through this, like the way things worked out, it was just almost magical. And so we were just talking, and I was like, hey, I'd like to come out there and see you. And I know people say that all the time, so when you're away from home, it's hard to get people to come out. And, I had a young child at the time or whatever, but I was like, I want to do this. And I started looking, and, I had some airline miles built up. So I was like, man, I'm coming. Like, I'm booking it. And next month we're doing it. And I think it was about October, something like that, when we did it. And so we didn't really know what was going to happen. I mean, I talked to you, and you're like, hey, it's a hit or miss on the weather. We might get out here and it might be super cold, might be snowing. Who knows what's going to happen? It's Montana in October. And, but I said, okay. So I booked a rental car and I said, let's go. Ryan, tell me what we're doing and plan the trip. This is your place. I'm going to be along for the ride. So I booked us a rental car. It's like a compact. And we get to the rental counter. No one's there. And the guy's like, hey, you want to upgrade to, a convertible for an extra like $5 a day? And I'm like, that's a no brainer. Of course we do. And so I looked at Ryan. I'm like, you want a Camaro or a Mustang? And he said, I want a Camaro. And so that was it. We went and grabbed a black Camaro convertible, new. Like we were just starting to put the new miles on it. And we took it, went to your house, and got kind of unpacked and settled a bit, uh, grabbed a beer. I remember it was the Wild Huckleberry Lager from up there, and that was a great beer, and I enjoyed it. It's probably one of my favorite beers, most favorite beers to this day. You can't get it there, and it's kind of hard to get your hands on, but love that. And he kind of showed me around the town. He showed me what makes Bozeman so cool and what makes Bozeman. And we got to see the downtown area, the university. We went to a local brewery, and we had a beer there. And you were working for a beer distributor at the time, so we were packing up the car. And I mean, you just picture. I mean, we've got all this stuff. We've got hammocks and just everything random crazy stuff for a trip. And we got this Camaro. You know, they don't have a trunk. I mean, it's barely anything. So we got like suitcases in the trunk. We got the entire back seat filled up with stuff. I mean, it's packed to the brim, and it's just us two up there. Good thing there's no one else because there was no room for him. And you know, for the trip, he was like, "Hey, you know, you want some beer for the trip? I mean, you know, we're going camping, whatever. Let's grab some beer." And he's like, "At this place I work at, man, they got this like throwaway pile of subs. If it's damaged or whatever, we can just get it. You know, they throw it away and they let the employees get it. You know, or otherwise it goes in the trash." And I'm like, "Yeah, sounds like a great idea. Let's go over there and rack up." So we pulled up, and you know, you walk in and come out, and you're like, "Hey, how do you feel about Corona?" I was like, "Well, you know, whatever. Free is free at this point." So he comes out with like 3 cases of Corona. You know, the boxes are damaged or whatever. They can't sell them, but you know, the bottles are fine. There might have been one busted bottle in all of them. I don't know. I mean, we didn't really care. So, yeah, we loaded up the car, loaded up the cooler, and we took off. Um, so I believe, you know, it's been so long, but I believe we came in through, was it Gardner that we came in?
Correct. Paradise Valley, Livingston, Paradise Valley, and then Gardner.
That's right. Yeah. And so that was cool, you know, seeing that, seeing Paradise Valley, and it was just so surreal. You know, you're driving down the highway and you see these mountain ranges on either side of you, and you're just kind of splitting it. And we went into Gardner, and went up through Mammoth and kind of, you know, explored some of that. We got out and hiked. And that's when I learned that I wasn't exactly in the shape that I thought I was. You know, at those altitudes, it definitely taxes you a little bit differently than it does at home. And, you know, I walk and do whatever. But, you know, getting up there, I'm like, oh, wow, like I'm getting winded quickly. You know, we're going up tons of stairs to see the different things. And, you know, we're not doing this like a tour group. We're running. We're not walking around. We have a lot to see, and I think I had like 5 days to do it. 4 days. It wasn't a lot. And so, I mean, we saw a lot, but we also were running. And so we went up there and saw the Mammoth Springs and all that, and then came back and took off through Yellowstone. Um, we ended up at the Lake Hotel, which you know, you were working at the time, and it was a cool experience there. You know, he had a friend that was working there at the Lake Hotel. He hooked us up with a super good dinner. We had like bison tenderloin and all kind of different stuff. It was awesome. And he had hooked us up with a room there at the Lake Hotel. So we got to stay there that night. And, you know, it's just surreal seeing all the stuff. You know, you're in this high, you know, lake in the middle of Yellowstone. And plus, you know, you worked there, so you had a connection to it. And it was kind of your beginning. You left Alabama and started off at the bottom at Yellowstone, you know, working for a contractor. And so I think it was cool to be able to experience that with you, and you show me the ropes. Met up with some friends of yours, went around, um, and I think the next day we ended up in Jackson Hole. So yeah, we went to Jackson, and he showed me around there. We went to the $1 Million Cowboy Bar, you know, went and grabbed some great food. And we got an Airbnb. Ryan had found an Airbnb for us. It was a little camper. They had it in the neighborhood or whatever, but, you know, it's Jackson, right? And, you know, we both kind of laughed. We were looking for it, and we were like, man, you know, Ryan's like, I know it's here. Like, he pinned this on the map. It's here. And we found it. A guy had converted like a trailer, and it was pretty elaborate the way he did it. You know, he had a bed that was in there. He had like a sink that was hooked up to, you know, one of the big water bottles. He had a lot of solar to run that, so he didn't need shore power. Solar basically ran everything in there with a nice, cool battery array. So he had a really good setup. And I mean, you know, we're trying to do this on a budget. Remember, you know, you're working, you know, at the time, and, you know, you're hustling, trying to make your way. You know, at the time, new family, so we didn't have a, you know, ton of cash to blow. So Ryan had found this for us, and, you know, it was there at the park or whatever, and we did, you know, we stayed there. We were just there one night anyway, stayed there, super cool. Um, you know, left the next day, and it was crazy. You know, we're in the middle of a neighborhood, and it was like a park, and we left the next day, and there's, you know, this huge moose just blocking our way, and we're like, well, this kind of sucks because there's one way out of this neighborhood. A moose is blocking our way, and we got stuff to see. Like, we don't have time to sit around and wait on this moose. But what are you going to do? So we waited for the moose to cross, and we took off back towards Jackson. Went to Jenny Lake. Ron had booked us a boat tour there in the Tetons at Jenny Lake, so we got to kind of float around there, and we had an awesome tour guide who showed us the sights, and he had been doing this like 15, 20 years. He had, already summited the Grand Teton and all, and had a lot of stories to tell. Just a really interesting guy that loved spreading, his love for the Tetons and Jenny Lake through these boat tours. That was one of the cool things that we did. And then we went back into Yellowstone, went around, saw Old Faithful, some different geysers and things like that throughout the park. Met some friends of Ryan's, and then went through West Yellowstone, and then back up through Big Sky. And so you showed me around Big Sky, and we did a lot. We stopped, we hung out, saw some of the fly fishing going on. And just some random rivers right there off the roadway. Just a really cool experience. And for my time out there, I mean, we covered so many miles and so much stuff. It was amazing. And it was just everything lined up perfectly. Like all it wasn't cold at all. It was maybe a little chilly. The fall foliage had kind of set in, so all the trees were like that orange and, those bright fall, colors that just, it was awesome. We didn't have any bad weather. Everything was open that we wanted to do. It's almost like doors just kept opening for us. We just got lucky time after time after time. And I do think it was a trip that I'll remember forever. And it was, my first experience out there. Had a great time. Yeah, loved it.
Yeah, man, I feel the same way. It was an awesome trip getting to experience that with my brother. We had a convertible Camaro, and we're driving through the Tetons, Yellowstone, Big Sky, Bozeman, the Gallatin Canyon, West Yellowstone, Old Faithful, getting to see the geysers. And shout out to my friends Sean Foster and Jessica Dong for hooking us up with the room and the meal, and they really treated us right, and they're great friends of mine. So shout out to them for making that trip even more special. And like you said, doors just kept opening, and we were just able to do everything we wanted to do, and we hardly had to wait on anything. And every time we showed up, it just happened. And I don't know, man, everything just lined up, and it was just a perfect trip in my eyes. And we got some great food all along the way. We came back to the house, we grilled out. We were able to celebrate a successful trip, and yeah, man, it was just an amazing experience with you.
It was. I mean, one thing I forgot, we pulled up. We didn't time this. We got out of the car, walked up, and then Old Faithful goes off. We didn't time it. This was something that we just, walked up, and then it goes off. Then, as we're driving away, there's another one that hadn't went off in a long time, and it just, it took off. So, like stuff, this one, it doesn't happen, but, every so many years. I can't remember the name. Is one of the ones in there.
Was it Beehive Geyser?
I'm not sure which one it was.
It might have been Beehive or something like that. I believe I remember that.
I know it was a rare occurrence. I remember that.
It was a pretty good interval between the geyser going off for sure. I remember we got lucky on that one. Mm-hmm. And with Old Faithful. I mean, it goes off, I think, every 90 minutes or so, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I might be. But we just rolled up on it. We rolled up and we were walking up casually, and it just went off right in front of us. I mean, what a trip, man. I mean, from start to finish, the theme was the same. Great weather, and the activities were just on point.
Very solid trip.
Solid trip. So, with that said, what are some destinations you are you looking forward to in the future, going with your family or anything like that? What do you look forward to?
Man, for me, I think it'll differ. If you ask my wife, she wants to go somewhere tropical. She wants to do that and go somewhere tropical, the Caribbean, whatever. So I'm sure we'll do that. Of course, gotta keep everyone happy. and I could enjoy some time like that too. So I'm sure we'll probably end up, within the next year, over in the Caribbean somewhere. I would like to go. For me personally, I'd like to check out, Southeast Asia. I think you've really hit that home, as far as being a really cool travel destination. The culture there is so distinguished from everywhere else. Um, yeah, so I think for me, I'd like to organize, something and maybe go to Vietnam, Thailand, places like that, and really just, get ingrained in that local culture, grab a moped and just go, go wild, go ride around and go eat all the food and, just experience how it is over there. I think that would be that's definitely on my list to do. And then, of course, I would like to do a nice Europe tour and go, especially spend some time over in Germany. Definitely spend some time over in Spain. Um, I think those would be on the top. I think I'd like to make a priority to do that.
Yeah, man, and you make whatever happen. You always make it happen. So you'll go to all those destinations, and it's gonna happen in the right time, and with your family as well. You always make time for your family, and you always bring your family with you, and now you have a tight family unit. So both of you are highly successful. She's about to be a nurse practitioner. So you both have got, and you're about to graduate with your master's, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, all the pieces are falling into place for you. You put in the work, you built that foundation, and the sky's the limit for you, man. I'm happy for you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. We're gonna wrap this up soon, but lastly, I wanted to ask you if you could leave the listeners with any advice, travel or in general, what would that be?
I think we discussed it earlier. One of the biggest pieces of advice is, if you find yourself ever the smartest person in the room, find another room. You always want to push yourself. You don't learn by being the smartest person at the table. You always want to be around people that know more than you or do better than you or, whatever that is, whatever you like. Always push yourself. And part of that is keeping a circle that everyone continues to push each other. So I really think it's so important to continue to encourage yourself. Make sure, whatever you do, if you love to travel or, if you love to just stay at home on the weekends, always try to progress. Stability is good, but growth is better, and so sometimes growth is a little uncomfortable and you have to give up something, which usually is stability, to be able to get the growth. So I think that, one of the biggest pieces in life is to, this is what you're given, and to go out here and, live your life the way you want to live it. Don't let other people judge or, compel you to live your life a certain way. You need to come out here and make your own way. I think you've done a great job of that. I'm definitely doing exactly what I love to do. And then when I retire, it'll probably be something else. I'll go and do something else that interests me. I don't plan to sit at home. I want to continue to grow, continue to, help people and just be that, inspiration, especially since, right now we've got 4 kids. So, I got 2 step kids and 2 biological kids, and we all, with my wife, we're a family unit, and we try to do as much as we can together. And, I think it's important that you spend time with your family and whoever that is, whatever that looks like. Make sure you prioritize them. Your work can replace you in a day. They can replace you. No matter how valuable you think you are, you can be replaced in a day. And so make sure, it's great to be successful, but at the same time, don't forget your family. Don't forget, take that time off, go travel, see the world.
Great advice. And I appreciate you coming on, man, and spending your time with me here and doing this podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, for sure.
And with that, folks, always remember, the world is your oyster. That's a wrap on this episode of People, Places, and Things. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Whether you're dreaming of your next adventure or just love hearing stories from across the globe, we hope we inspired a bit of wanderlust in you today. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe,
leave us a review, and share it with fellow travelers. Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, keep discovering new people, places, and things.